Anyway, Chris Hansen live with Karate Breakdown, Michael Nguyen. How you guys doing? If you're new to my channel focuses on cross training and other arts and combat sports to make your base art better. And in my case, it's karate. Mike is a longtime friend of mine. I was aware of his stuff way back in the mid 2000s, and then closer to COVID, we got more acquainted, and I went out to. If you guys don't know this, I went out to Texas to see Mike way back in 2018, and he housed me in his place. And this is the grassroots of the dojo at San Antonio. So anyway, welcome to the channel, brother. Finally, we get a chance to hang out again. How you doing?
For sure, man. Thanks for having me. Yeah, it's crazy to think how long it's been. 2018. I was looking at some of the old karate culture videos, and it's like, I think we started those filming that stuff like a few years before the dojo opened. So it would have been like 15, 16, almost 9 years ago now. It's
Yeah,
crazy.
yeah, yeah. Now, I was very impressed by your thinking, like the way your mind worked. You know what I mean? And there was one there was many videos, but there was one video that you did um, where you compared, you basically made a bold statement. Okinawa is the original MMA.
Oh
And
yeah.
that video was, oh my God, I got goosebumps when I saw it. And I'm talking about it, I still got goosebumps. And it was a simple video, but I think you got over 1 million views now on that video, and that message just resonated with me so strongly because I've been thinking like this since the beginning of time, decades ago. There's more to karate than just form, and the way you make connections outside and bring it all back in to, make it functional and stuff is really amazing. So I said, hey, you know what? I got some disposable income. I want to come see you, and yeah, and like guys, if you don't know this, Michael is basically the catalyst for all of this. I you deny it, but
Mm.
honestly, if you remember, Mike, we were sitting down eating those little buns that you got from that bakery.
Right.
Do you
Right.
remember that? The
Yeah,
most
the
delicious
kolaches.
things ever, man. What do you call those things again?
It's like a Eastern European thing. It's kolaches. I'm probably
Okay.
pronouncing it wrong, but yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Kochale, something like that.
Yeah. I remember you got a box of those and
Yeah.
it was just fresh and steamy. And you know what it reminded me of? It reminded me of the Chinese char siu baos,
Yeah,
right?
Baos. Yeah.
Yeah, the baos, yeah. So we were talking about like we were just eating and talking and you just said, Chris, you just let me know and I'll help you open the floodgates out to your content, shortly after, I started doing all this. So I gotta thank you for that. Um,
No, man, it's all you. You're even though, people tell you to do a lot of things, but it takes you yourself to actually go out there to do it. So that's all. That's full credit to you, man.
you're the catalyst, but no, thank you. But anyway, so let's get to the chase. Making karate real again. So I got a question. What the
Yeah,
heck happened?
that's funny. You probably know more than me since you've been in it longer than I have,
I've got my
honestly.
ideas, but I want you to talk about this.
Yeah,
Yeah.
well, what's interesting is I'm kind of living through that on the Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu side of things, and
Yes.
I make those parallels all the time just because I'm in between those two worlds all the time too. But I think Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu is getting there at a faster rate than karate, and it's a lot of it has to do with just the commercialization of martial arts. I'm sure it's been repeated over and over again, but that's a big one. Once you turn martial arts into a way to make a living, then you kind of water it down, right? So. And that's no fault of anybody. I'm not in the position where I'm trying to scrap money together and make a living out of teaching martial arts. So I understand I'm like an outside observer and all that, but an easy way to keep students is just make it a little easier for everyone to rank up, and that's kind of how it is. And then as people kind of look at other dojos and the ideas kind of spread around the world through the internet and stuff. It just those strategies, those marketing strategies, those business practices kind of get spread out even faster than it would have been back in the day.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. A lot of it had to do with the commercialization of it, and uh, there was a huge stigma, and there still is with karate. I mean, there's so many, this is such a big topic. Like you can see it just from the audience and the attendees of certain clubs. Like, okay, you see a lot of movement from karate guys going into combat sports, tactical combative schools, and you know, um, uh, camps. Okay,
Hmm.
you don't see it the other way around. You don't see combat sport players and tactical combatives people like eagerly wanting to learn what we're doing.
Yeah.
And so that there's the problem right there. You see, so like one of the reasons why I started what I was doing is because there's got to be a gap that needs to be filled, right? And I think you're doing that really well because like the way I see it is you're you're looking at everything from common biomechanical threads and activating karate. So like I'd like you to talk about like, what is, for example, the key driving force behind, your practice and behind karate breakdown, you know, in bridging this gap.
Yeah, so the biggest thing for me and like when I started this channel, the second channel, was really just to get my ideas out there because it was just like you, and I'm obsessed with this looking at combat martial arts and trying to research and stuff like that. And I
Yep.
would find these connections, and I just didn't have anyone to really share it with, after COVID and stuff. So I just started making this type of, I guess it's like a ghost profile. No one really knew who it was, but someone on Karate Breakdown was making videos. But but the reason why I'm keeping it going, it's like, how do I make the biggest change with a team of one, right? With the minimum, with the effort that I'm doing by myself. And it's like
Yeah.
if you teach locally, that's like a pocket of, if you're lucky, 5, 10, 15 people.
Yep.
But if you keep creating online content, that can reach around the world, you know? So
100%. Yeah.
so it's kind of like my I've been shying away from opening up a local club. It crosses my mind all the time, but it's like, what can I do to reach the most amount of people to make the most amount of change? And I think an online platform is probably the best thing.
Yeah.
And that's kind of the motivation, the driving force behind this.
Well, you're a family man now, so it's
Yeah.
hard to do all that. I mean, at the time, I wanted to do that. It's kind of hard for me now too. My daughter is 12 now,
Hmm.
and she's we can talk more about her later, but still, I mean, she's still growing. I still need to put in a lot of time to grow her,
Yeah.
physically and mentally. So I can't do a dojo. Everyone's
Yeah.
asking me to do it, but same like you, man. I think we're on the similar path. I mean, I whatever time I have, I'll dedicate to this channel. And it seems to be working because, I get work internationally and in the States too. So it's a nice thing. And I'm having fun. So,
Yeah.
but
I mean, for
yeah,
you, I mean, I'm sure it's nice to get recognized for your efforts because you've been at this for 30 plus years, I'm sure.
yeah,
Probably more than that. But it's like, for you, I bet you're dying to tell more people, and this YouTube channel is kind of like your outlet to do that, you know? So it's
exactly,
so
exactly. Like I I gravitated towards like I really wanted to meet you, and I did, and I still want to keep this going because I feel your passion, man. Like like minds think alike. Like every I remember like even if you remember when we're in 2018, we went out to an outdoor event with a bunch of your guys.
hmm.
One of them I think I can't remember his name. He was one of your students. Um, Spanish guy, and then Aaron. We went out to an outdoor event. We
Okay.
had a few drinks, and there was this big screen there. And I think we were watching a fight. I think we were watching a fight that night. It was a UFC fight or something. Do you
Okay.
remember
Yeah.
this?
Kind of. It's
Kinda.
kind of
Anyway,
jogging my memory.
you
Yeah.
you took your phone out right beside me, and you were making clips
Mm.
of this for your channel right
Hmm.
beside me, and then you were posting it when this was happening. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
like I thought I was the crazy one. You know what I mean?
Yeah, man. I mean, it's one of those things, and I do feel like people like us or and other people online, like there's one being willing to put yourself out there, and two, that means you get the positive and the negative comments too. But then there's
Yeah,
also there is something to having a an eye for like biomechanics, right? An eye for making these connections that a lot of people don't. So it's a disservice to kind of keep it to yourself. So I've
yeah.
always felt that need or that urge to just share these connections because maybe like the first video won't help somebody, but the 100th video, right, might. So it's just like keeping pushing the content, keeping to push the content out there just to see if I could make some change is kind of what it is. Yeah.
So let's drill down to the issue. So
Hmm.
what are some things that you have done and you recommend to karate practitioners, or even let's go a little global here, traditional martial art practitioners, to add more functionality and to keep things real? Because, I think it's safe to say we do have a stigma, and it's not just karate. Filipino martial arts gets bashed for this, Tai Chi, all these
Yeah.
traditional arts. I mean, I think people are forgetting that yeah, it's traditional, but they were their inherent, how could I say, system is it's self-defense. It's a martial art, right? So how do you, what would you recommend in your training and for others to instill functionality and aliveness and all these kind of
Yeah.
things? Yeah,
And I would say the stigma is like self-created too. It was created by traditional guys because it's one thing, it's like it was a power like a power dynamic, right? Because it's you don't want to get beat up as a sensei. You don't want to get questioned as a sensei. So it's easy to kind of not allow other people to cross train like you cross train all the time. Not a lot of people to question things, and you imagine that going down generations of students, and it kind of builds this kind of hero worship to a sensei that probably hasn't sparred for real in a decade, right?
yeah,
So it's a stigma. We're trying to change it, but karate guys, traditional guys, also created that amongst themselves because it's they're kind of protecting their knowledge and kind of their status.
yeah. That's
Um,
a tough one. That's a tough
yeah,
one to stomach, man. But it's true. I mean,
yeah.
if you take a look, like and I don't mean this in a disrespectful way. I mean this from an empirical, observational truth.
Let me be the guy. I'll be the disrespectful one. So just say it was me.
No, but you know what I'm saying. I mean, you see a lot of unathletic display of technique. Like I, I don't know how else to say it. You need to be in shape. If you're training in martial arts, you have to have a well balanced mind and body. Unless you've got some physical and medical problems. If you don't, I mean, you're doing yourself a disfavor if you're not optimizing, yourself. You know what I mean? And so, like you said, I mean, um, there's that problem right there. But
Yeah.
um,
Yeah, I mean it's like being a teacher, like you're in teaching is being a teacher on not knowing the subject you're teaching, right? So being a martial artist or a fitness guy, you always have to be ready, stay ready. That's kind of the mantra. So if you're an instructor and you're overweight and you can't spar and stuff like that, like what false sense of security does that give to your students, which can actually hurt them in the long run and get them in trouble? So
yeah,
it's a lot of responsibility to be a sensei beyond just trying to collect dues every month, you know? So, but going back to your question, like,
yeah,
I think it's always, we've talked about this before. It's, you got to learn how to play. You got to learn how to, um, allow, I guess, allow an egoless environment in your class so that things can happen organically. And I talk about this a lot. You don't want to, what's the term? Not regret, but you don't want to like make a mistake and pay for it in the dojo because that's like when people start tensing it up, right? Because if you're sparring and all you know is hard sparring, no one's gonna try to do anything or experiment with anything if they're in fear of getting knocked out with every mistake they make, right? So yes, you need hard sparring, but you also need a time for play. You need a time for experimentation, and that's like the biggest thing. And a lot of people who ask me like, how do you even begin to do grappling? How do you even begin to do some tegami or clinch fighting? I would say tone it down to like 5% and just understand how the human body works, just
Exactly.
just move with each other.
Yeah. Yeah.
Just
It's
repetition with movement,
go ahead. Go ahead. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
No, please, please, please. Yeah.
Yeah, I was just saying like it's repetition of movements will build those pathways that you can figure out on your own. If you have no instructor, if you don't have anyone, if you can't cross train at a grappling school, find a partner that you can just play with and you will learn a lot. I owe a lot of my growth to Aaron from Karate
Yeah.
Culture, So a lot of people know we spent years just meeting up after class on weekends and trying to figure this thing out before we even made our first video. And that's kind of like where we cut our teeth on all this stuff.
Yeah, no, it shows, man. And you've recorded a lot of those scrimmages and things, and it shows. I mean, like, and seriously, what's your take on this? There's really no excuses now in our digital age. Think about it. If you've got a Wi-Fi connection and you've got committed partners, you don't need money, man. You need some money to upkeep this structure. You're pay for your internet and all that stuff, but
Right.
and some tech. But I mean, seriously, if
It's tough.
I
I talked to some friends about that. Like it's
yeah,
having an active versus passive role in your learning, right? Because
yeah.
it's easy to sign up, pay your $150 a month, show up to class twice a week, and then you rank up, get your black belt in 3 or 4 years, right? And then you can tell people you got your black belt. But that's a very passive way to train.
Yeah.
But taking that step to thinking of a drill to train with a buddy on the side, that's a big leap for a lot of people. And
Yep.
I used to like talk down on people like that, but I understand like everyone has different strengths, like I can't wait to meet someone new and just figure out a drill with them and do it on the spot, but that's my personality. So
Yeah.
I also can't do kata down online for years at a time anymore nowadays. That seems really boring to me.
Yep. I I um I love where this is going. I mean, there's this so this whole idea of passive passive learning and things like that, passive and active learning. I mean, you can go to a class, you can get some instruction and this and that, but it doesn't end there. You know what I mean? Like for you to continuously become fluent, you need to be thinking, man, and you need to be flowing and playing. So like back to this play thing, you know, the latest buzzword uh, out there now is ecological dynamics, right? And the idea of structured versus non-structured play. I mean, and it goes deep into pedagogical studies in education and things, and like we're big on that. Like we like as part of our postgraduate study in, for example, in education, we learned a lot about this ecological dynamic thing, with respect to like children's learning and things. And it's really no
Hmm.
different from combat sport or sport, martial arts sport or sport in general. The idea that if you give somebody a restricted rule set, but then lighten up the rule set and allow for problem solving. Oh, it's a beautiful thing because you allow the person to deal with their strengths and weaknesses and figure out what their next steps are, under controlled pressure. You know what I mean?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, I did a deep dive on that a couple years ago. It kind of flooded through the BJJ community as well, the whole constraints-led approach, ecological approach. And I've given first day white belts their free trial class either with the ecological approach versus like a traditional approach. And you could tell, and I do these experiments on people. I most of the time I never see them again because they try it out and they're not back, right? But
Yeah.
the people that I take through the EA approach, they're looking like jiu-jitsu guys on day one. In that first 10 minutes, because it's not, hey, you got to learn side control, now you got to learn mounts, and now you got to learn trap and roll. It's try to get your chest on top of their chest and see what
Right.
happens.
It's a big
So
idea.
it's
Yeah.
yeah, bigger concepts, boil it down to like one rule. They have one rule, you have one rule, and you try to do that back and forth. if you took a snapshot of that person without any context, you would say, hey, that person's trained in something before,
Right.
when maybe they haven't, right? So I'm a big proponent for that. But it also goes back to passive and active instructors, right? Because not only does the student need to have a role in that, this instructor too, because you can't just go in and be like, hey, what do you guys want to do today? Like, I was too busy to think of a curriculum or a lesson plan for the day. And I
Yeah.
see that all the time, right? I've been in
Yeah.
classes like that all the time. So,
You got to practice what you preach, man.
yeah.
Yeah. No, for sure. I get it. Yeah, it's funny. Uh, just a quick snippet. So my training now has I I'm enrolled in a Japanese jiu-jitsu club. So we train that, and it's old school Japanese jiu-jitsu. So the focus is on self-defense.
Hmm.
There's a big grappling component, obviously, and I faced my fears there, but just the whole idea of having some sort of grappling free flow type of learning exercise puts fuel to all the stuff I've learned before,
Yeah.
and I find it gives anyone a home to really come alive, So like we have classes where just to talk to what you're saying, um, we had a class one day where we did a session where, okay, real simple, big idea. You strike, I grapple. And the moment we get into some sort of a stalemate, we switch roles. And so, and bro, that's hard.
Right.
That's really hard, and it's cardio taxing too,
Yeah.
and it teaches you, like, if it teaches you to strategically strike. So when you're striking to grapple and you're grappling to strike, you know what I mean? And just that alone really changes the way you train. And I know I like, what's your take on that?
No, 100%. I mean, that's a big rift that's happening in the jiu-jitsu community right now. It's jiu-jitsu for self-defense or competition, and it's right now is dominated by competition, and it's I'm a competitor myself, but I also have this self-defense lens,
Yes,
and it's two completely different mindsets, two
yes,
different skill sets, right? Because if you like, side control, right? Someone's
yep, side control,
chest
yep,
on top of you, right? In in sport, your idea is to get them off of your chest and put a barrier between you and him,
yeah,
right? So that you
frame
can
out, and yeah,
exactly. In self-defense, it's the opposite. You need to keep them close because if they posture up, they can strike.
strike
Even
or weapon deployment,
right.
yeah,
It's even that one example extrapolated by like all the other positions, all the other opportunities or situations. It branched out to two different type of styles now, right? So
yes,
I always recommend anyone who trains jiu-jitsu to spend like 1 month, 1 day a month to just add some slaps in there. So you could
yeah,
just see the difference, right?
yeah.
At the bare minimum, do that. But yeah, I every time I teach jiu-jitsu, even at a competition school, I always throw out the thing, if the guy's gonna punch here, then you should probably do this, right? So
Yeah.
at least I kind of throw out the vocabulary, but it's yeah, it's very different.
You
Two
know,
completely
I gotta this is to all the combat sport gyms out there, though, the MMA gyms out there. I have to say that they are awakening up. Like a lot of these schools now, like I've been fortunate enough to travel and talk to a lot of people. Like, for example, one big player is Eric Paulson. Uh,
different.
I just spoke to him recently, and maybe a little over a month ago, and he's a huge proponent of marrying a lot of these concepts together: combat
Yeah.
sports, combatives, traditional arts, and sports science, right? And he has, it's part of his curriculum. So like I asked him, I said, how do you what's your formula for cross training? What does that look like? And he says it's really simple. He says he looks at the ranges. So he says, you we work long range, we work clinch range, trapping range, we work to takedowns and takedown defenses, and then we just throw in different disciplines inside of there. And every now and then, we'll have concealed weapons, and we'll train it that way. And he says, there's going to be days where guys that are grappling, he goes, we're going to put on MMA gloves and we're going to just be tapping, just tapping. And they just have to deal with all these things, tap to deploy something and go. And then we'll have surprise scenarios in the gym where somebody will just come out of nowhere and do some things and just constantly stress your nervous system, you know?
Yeah,
That's healthy, man,
for
right?
sure. Yeah, and Eric Paulson is a big name. He was big in Japan like 30, 40 years ago too.
Yeah.
And thing with him and kind of the luxury with that too, like there's a few approaches, right? You can train everything, and then if you have a dedicated competition team, you could scale everything back down to specific rule sets for that competition. So yeah, if you were like a hobbyist off the street, you came in, yeah, let's learn it all. And then a month later you realize, hey, this guy actually wants to do kickboxing. All right, let's tailor a program that's kickboxing
Focus on that.
specific to him,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah.
But yeah, I love his stuff. I watch his stuff all the time. But yeah, he definitely knows a lot, knows all the
Oh,
ranges for
he's
sure.
he's an
Yeah.
OG, man, and he
Yeah.
gets it. And like I spoke to him both offline and online, and the offline conversations I kind of wish I recorded, but you know, he just he the bottom line is, respect all arts. Every single system or sport has something to offer, and not one art alone. And this is where I want your take on it. What not one art alone is complete,
Mm.
right? And I know you mentioned before in some of your content, you were saying that karate is a complete system, but you had a caveat around that. I'd like to talk about that. Yeah,
Yeah, it's kind of my I guess it's kind of my way to have my cake and eat it too, right? Because I grew up cross training, but I remember my old sensei used to say like you have to pick a home too, right? So it's like what is your yes, you're a mixed martial artist, but what is your home base? And I was like, well, in that case, karate is what I do, and everything I do is an expression of that karate, right? So to me, the katas that I learn, the movement that I learn are just human movement, and I can apply them on the ground.
yeah,
Even as I teach a jiu-jitsu class, I'm thinking of the kata movements that's kind of related to that. So it's kind of what lens you decide to look at martial arts through. And I feel like choosing my home in karate has kind of helped me ground myself in self-defense, ground myself in something traditional, while also being able to branch out and train in other things.
yeah. No,
Yeah.
sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
No, so you do cross train, I know that, and you're continuously like making linkages and things. Where I have an issue with, and it's not just a personal issue. It's a scientific one. A lot of practitioners justify their movements by saying, okay, this is in the kata. So and so, insert Okinawan master's name here. Page reference this according to
Hmm.
this person and this kata. Here's the application here, right? Without empirical testing,
Mm.
and so and the testing that's done is drills that are, again, it hasn't left the kata phase. A lot of these drills, it could be really intense and fast, and you've changed the rhythm, and you've shortened up the gap, but it still lacks
Right.
aliveness, right? And so this is the danger. So, like, within this umbrella of this Institute of Karate, if you don't look outside and you don't, like, say, okay, let's try it against a wrestler, let's try it against a knife man, let's try it against a Filipino martial art man, let's try it against Korean arts, let's just try different ways to test, right? Then you wouldn't, to me, like, you wouldn't really understand the application, right? So,
Yeah.
like I don't know where I'm trying to go with this. I guess the question I'm trying to ask is do you think that, like, the fact that karate can be a complete system, But the prerequisite for it to being a complete system is you need to want it to make it a complete system, and therefore, by wanting to make it a complete system, you need to kind of test by looking outside and bringing
Yeah.
it back in.
Yeah.
Do you
So
agree with that, or
so
like,
I kind of go through this in my head all the time. It's
yeah?
because like, as your channel grows, the hate also grows too.
Oh,
So you read
yeah,
that as well.
yep,
So I plan to make a video on this, but it's the idea of like, are you a historian? Are you a revisionist? Are you a revolutionary? Right?
love it.
And for
Yeah,
me, it's like there's historical aspects of the katas that we do. Um, and there are people that are super beholden to that, right? So I call them like the historian karate guys, the encyclopedias that hey, they can
and
name the
there's
date.
nothing wrong with that.
Yeah, that's your
Nothing wrong with that.
expression of karate, right?
Yeah,
For me, like the old Okinawan masters, the only constant for them is evolution, is change, because for them it's
performance.
like
Yeah,
survival. So they were talking to all these other styles. They were taking out things that didn't work. They were testing it, like you said. So like my biggest connection to those Okinawan masters is that mindset. And in that case, like maybe I'm a revisionist, maybe I'm a revolutionary, and I'm going away from the historian aspect of it. But I would feel like those guys wouldn't have wanted a historical aspect of it either, because as you stay rooted in the past, you are also stuck to the old ways that probably didn't work, right?
yeah.
Or just tradition for tradition's sake.
Yeah, this is I'm excited about this. I get really passionate about this topic. I mean, I I I think you're right. Um, and I'm not a historian, but I do have a lot of books. I've spoken to a lot of people who are older than me, and some have passed away. And these guys are the OGs. One of my masters, Master Vic Arnold, he was well read, and he knew Patrick McCarthy,
Hmm.
Ian Abernathy, and all these guys. And he basically told me, he says, these guys, they were always learning. It was in their best interest to evolve. They were in an age where, they didn't have what we have now. So they were restricted, by their means of transportation and their ways of, you know, uh, proliferating messages and things. And so things were really slow, right? But
Right.
but um they were always keeping an eye on different styles. There was like wars, kung fu wars, Wing Chun versus Hung Gar and this and that, and you know, uh, it was always happening. But then these guys died, and they died. The evolution kind of stopped. Some carried it on, and some kind of delusionally took these ideas and tried to make what these guys did as the gospel truth. But what's your take on this? Like, so these style masters stopped. Um, they've created these styles, but don't you think these styles were just a personalization of their journey, right? It's just
I
theirs.
mean,
It's not
it's
ours.
the
It's
whole Bruce
theirs.
Lee thing, right? Like Bruce Lee had that Junfei school, and then he closed it down, and then did Jeet Kune Do, and then stuff
Yeah.
like that. Closed those down. Like, and in my history too, the same thing. Like my students in college got a very different look of who I was at that time than my students 10 years ago, and then my students currently, right? It's also as an instructor, you are trying to foster your students' growth, but also you're trying to pass along kind of what you are instilling in them, and therefore a little bit of you goes into them, right? So it's like there should be a little reflection of that. So, but yeah, those I think those masters, if your goal is to evolve, they would have that same mentality. You're not trying to create a cult following of yourself. You're trying to create a mindset of people that are also looking for the truth and looking for what works.
Yeah.
Um, and a little bit of that, I'm sure, is like Eastern, like Orientalism, hero worship for something like mysticism, stuff like that from the American side too. So you have to like factor that into. There's some cool thing about being Eastern karate martial artists from the 60s that people liked back then, and it kind of just stuck. Let's see.
Making karate real again. So, I mean, if okay, there's no doubt. if you look at a Kyokushin guy, um, there's no questioning there. You know what I'm saying? So like, why doesn't anyone question a Kyokushin fighter? Why doesn't anyone question a Muay Thai fighter? Why doesn't
Yeah.
anyone question a boxer? You know what I mean? Like, okay, here's the thing. When my daughter was getting into martial arts a couple of years ago, I asked her. I said, what if we were gonna do something? What would you pick? What's your take on karate? She's going, no, Daddy, I don't want to do karate. That's everybody
Boomer
gets a
stuff.
black belt in karate.
Mm.
This is her telling me this from just a little kid, right? So the messaging, like this messaging that it's out there, man. So how do we make karate real again? You know,
Yeah.
without like um disrespecting anybody. Like
I, I think there needs to be some disrespecting to be made to actually make a voice out there in today's society. But
yeah,
I I think about it like music, right? There's pop music that's easy to digest, everyone likes it. And then
yeah,
there's like the musician's music, which is like jazz, where it's kind of
easy.
confusing. There's nuances to it, right?
Yeah.
You kind of have to be well learned to understand what's happening.
Yes.
Um, but so a lot of the karate styles that people respect nowadays, it's kind of brutish. It doesn't mean it's bad, but it's very hard style
Yeah. Yeah.
because it's easier to see that it's working, right? You kick somebody in the thigh and they fall over. Yes, it's yeah, that works.
Yeah.
But when I see a clip of like a Tai Chi master doing like push hands and stuff, I see like, and I'm sure you do, like all the little adjustments, the micro adjustments that are happening in like a 2 second clip. There's like hundreds of decisions being made.
Oh yeah.
But but you have to like that's why like I do breakdowns on my channel. Like you have to point that out for a lot of people.
Yes.
It's not as obvious. And so, when something's not as obvious, it's not as catchy, it's not as trendy nowadays either.
Do you ever get pushback from your audience? Like, because I know I do. Say you're showcasing a clip of a Tai Chi guy doing some sort of push hands. Like, well, a very common application. I don't have a space to do it, but it's a movement where you start off down, you turn, this hand crosses, and you go like this, okay?
Hmm.
And you're
Or
in a
brush the
wide
tail or
stance,
something. Yeah.
right? You're in a
Yeah.
wide stance, and it's basically a throw. You're
Hmm.
bypassing, you're cutting in center line, and you're
Step
shooting it.
behind, takedown. Yeah.
Yeah. Um, I I've showcased different movements from kata and paired it up biomechanically with other things. And the biggest pushback I get is this, and many iterations of it. You are stretching.
Mm.
You're stretching. It's not the case, right?
Right.
What's your take on that?
Yeah. I mean, what's my take on that?
Yeah.
It's
I mean, I understand where they're coming from, but
For me, it's whenever I see a comment like that, I think I'm gonna have this job for a very long time.
yeah, that's right.
If my job is to if my life's goal is to kind of open up everyone's eyes and 99% of the comments are, "Hey, this is not karate,"
That's
then
right.
I get to do this for a very long time. So I'm
Yeah.
happy about that.
Yeah, 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 yeah. Yep. I
That
mean,
stuff, yeah, negative comments don't affect me. I kind of laugh them off a lot.
yeah, you're good at that actually. Many
Some
times
people just have a bad
I've
day,
had to consult you on how do I deal with this stuff? You know what I mean?
You know, it's like when you see something you don't like online, the easiest thing is to just keep scrolling. But somebody
Yeah.
might have a bad day and they just want to type something out, and you just gotta
Yeah.
understand, hey, they're probably not in a good mood right now, so just let
Yeah.
them have that.
Yeah, no, it's funny, the whole when you suggested for me to, start all this stuff, I was like, oh my God, how am I going to deal with all this stuff? You know what I mean? And
Right.
eventually I got better and better at kind of I don't know, developing thick skin, but actually it was more of a emotional intelligence kind of thing. Learning how to be politically correct, but also um, empathetic.
Mm.
As you said, sometimes some people might be just having a bad day, or they're just reactionary, and maybe they just oversaw something that they didn't really understand, and then, so like I love these moments where I stay calm and I kind of just say, uh, have I understand what you're saying, but have you looked at it this way, kind of thing, and in a non-judgmental kind of way. And then what's really cool afterwards is they actually end up saying sorry. You know what I mean? I love
Yeah.
those things. It's a win, right?
Yeah, and they might not even remember saying what they said in the first place, right? So it's interesting when you have dialogues like that. I try to avoid responding to a lot of things.
Yeah.
It's healthier that way for sure.
So you've grappled for a while. Your rank in I think you're purple or
Uh,
blue or
I'm a second degree black belt in Brazilian
oh
Jiu-Jitsu.
my God. Okay, so
Yeah,
time
it's
has
been a long
passed.
time. Yeah, it's been a long time.
Okay. So you're pretty up there. So there's no doubt I'm singing to the choir here where you see direct connections between the moves, the drills that you do and the moves, specific moves that you do in BJJ with karate, right? Now, I think you cross train, right? So now here's the thing. The defense to that is you don't need to do that if you're in karate.
Mhm.
We've got throws too. There's Tagumi, there's all this kind of stuff. Why bother going out to another art to learn this when you can have it in your own art, right? So,
Yeah.
I mean, what's your take on cross training?
Yeah, and that's kind of the thing where I don't I rather not cater to new students at this point in my life. I would rather cater to other instructors, right? And
Yes.
that's because the reason why we cross train now is because current karate dojos don't have those practices. It
Yeah.
was in the history of karate, but it's not there now. So, and then the biggest fear or what can happen is you fall in love with the thing you cross trained in, and you stop doing karate, which I've seen that a lot as well. So, um, it's finding the balance, understanding your roots and understanding why you're doing what you're doing and why you're cross training. But yeah, you have to cross train in today's world for karate just because it's not available at most dojos nowadays, is my answer. Yeah.
No, but I mean, I, it's just good learning, right? It's just good learning. Like if you're I'm going to be honest, a lot of the interpretations of the katas that I was taught when I was a kid, um, I believed in all of them
Hmm.
until I started uh, playing with other people with different patterns,
Right.
random patterns. It just messed up and broke down the system. So, I could have gone either way. I could have said, okay, look, I could have been in denial and say, look, I don't want to train with you. I'm going to keep doing what I'm doing, right? Or I'm going to embrace what you're doing and see how I can problem solve with what I have. You know what I mean? And I kind of chose that route. And I didn't give up what I was doing. I just added on, integrated, changed things up and so like I just for the audience out there, if you can summarize and just to respect time, it's 8:52. Do you
Yeah.
have how much time do you have left?
We'll probably wrap up right at 9 for you if that works.
Okay, sure.
Yeah.
We're good. Yeah. So what was my question, man? Help me, Mike. Where was I? I'm an old man. I'm forgetting now.
Yeah, we're talking about cross training, just doing cuts or doing karate training. What are you saying? See if the chat can help us.
Um yeah, like we don't have all of the answers, right? And
Hmm.
if I mean, okay, we can reverse engineer things, okay? But a lot of those it all depends on how you reverse engineer. You would have to reverse engineer with good testing, okay?
Yeah.
But that takes a little time and it's a good process. But why not have that process plus direct instruction from another perspective right away? You know what I mean? So like, okay, if I want to reverse engineer some sort of grappling type of application in my kata. And,
Right.
I kind of have an inkling that, okay, say a low gedan barai would be a great idea to shoot in center line and throw, let's just say. Okay.
Hmm.
I could try all that out and but then I could just say see a sambo guy or an MMA guy do these kind of throws or and just quickly insert it in there and then my reverse engineering just takes on another flavor, Like what's your take
Yeah.
on that? Reverse
No, it's
engineering trying to get to that same result versus directly cross training in a particular art for a particular range.
it's like you said, it's time, right? It's
Yeah.
time, and also, at least for most grappling arts, those people have put in the time to fail, which I say it's a big deal because like when I teach a jiu-jitsu class and I teach a technique, it's the one that worked for me after hundreds of trials of failing, right? I'm not teaching them, hey, I'm going to try this for the first time. I'm going to teach you this. Let's see if it works. We're not collectively trying to brainstorm and trying to figure out the results. If I'm there as an instructor and they're trying to learn the right thing to do, then I am cutting their learning time in half or more than half because I'm telling them, hey, this is actually biomechanically correct. This is why you should do this. Um, so like you said, yeah, you need time to play, but you also need some expert there, some type of instructor to give you the right direction to go into, right?
Yep. Yep. You're right. I mean, there were many many times like uh how could I say? There were some years where I was dojoless for various reasons. And so I was solo training a lot with groups of people. Nothing wrong with that, but there's limitations to that, right? Uh, you know, ultimately, you need to be in a club environment, some sort of a big group environment where, you have different bodies, different perspectives, and the owners are continuously evolving as well. That to me is a healthy environment, right?
Right.
But that so I think guys that we're listening here, we're getting closer to the answer, and we've touched on all these different answers. So like making karate real again, cross training, the ability to play, um, having egoless an environment, and is there anything else that comes to mind? Like I just got to say though, like back to what you're saying, like be like Mike. All right. So like you're continuously um critically thinking about biomechanics. You're also critically like you're also continuously innovating. Like what's really cool, if you guys don't know about this about Mike, like um when I came to see you in 2018, you had in your porch there all these different tools and things that you've
Uh,
made. You know what I
right.
mean? To train yourself and your students. Like, so I mean, um, that's another thing too, right? So like if we could just summarize, okay, if we just maybe kind of list out in bullet points, in our minds, all the things like Spitfire, how do you make karate or traditional martial arts real again and keep it contemporary?
Yeah, I think you listed them. Cross train, learn how to play more, find a good training partner. There's some questions here in the chat that we could cover as well
Oh yeah.
afterwards.
I can't see that, but maybe you can talk to that.
Yeah. Um, yeah, I think you covered a lot of them. So I'm gonna go to the chat real quick. So,
Yeah.
um, on your blocks fruits, he's asking if you're there. So maybe you could respond to him.
Oh, I wonder.
Studinator
Oh, that's one of my
says,
students.
"Oh, okay, okay."
Yeah.
Studinator says, "What would you do if there's no options for that type of environment, though? Realistically, if it feels like a lot of folks have to solo train for various reasons." No dojo, no people available. Yeah, what would you do if you had to solo train just by yourself
Oh.
without training partners or without a dojo environment? What
Hmm.
what would your answer be to that?
How about you start, and then I'll add in. Yeah.
Yeah, I think you kind of touched on that. I mean, I made a lot of solo training tools and dummies and arms and stuff like that when I was in my like rabbit hole deep diving phase of like understanding the human body, I really took it upon myself to make those tools to just get those reps out there. A lot of times when you solo train, it's either doing repetitious movement on a thing that another person might be pretty bored just standing there doing, like standing there for you, you know? A lot, it reminds me of like learning the foundations, brushing your teeth. It reminds me of like doing your ABCs. You could do a lot of that by yourself and not waste somebody else's time. And when you do meet up with somebody, that's when you like experiment with things that have been in your head that you need another person to move with.
Yeah.
Um, and then I mean, other than kata and stuff, I mean, there's tons of boxing drills, footwork drills, all the common answers, right? Coordination drills, stuff like that that you can do solo.
Yeah, exactly. Like I mean, you can shadow box, learn how to shadow box. Have get some good YouTube videos on that. Pick up a dummy. Learn position in grappling and stuff. But bottom line, you're gonna need a partner to experiment, and you need the pressure, right? But I mean, like for years I solo trained in the beginning and somewhere in the middle too. And but the premise there was I had lots of instructional training prior to that. But if you don't, you can still develop a relatively good base, I think, and stay in shape solo training. There's nothing wrong with that. But I mean, I think if you want to really understand the art and do justice to its purpose, you're gonna need another person, you know? Um, I don't know. That's my answer. Yeah.
Yeah, it's hard. It's hard to get around that need.
Yeah. But yeah, so anyway, we've reached the hour mark. I
Yeah.
wanted to say thank you so much for coming on, and if we can basically have some closing thoughts. If there's anything you'd like to promote or talk about, anything upcoming, um, go ahead.
Shoot, I'm not great at this promotion stuff. Just you could promote your stuff. I mean, we're all on the same mission. I think
Yeah,
nowadays I'm less so about trying to get people to do what I do. It's more about people who train versus people who don't train, right? There's benefits to training versus not training. The community aspect, the self-defense aspect, just find a good school that you can kind of learn something and do stuff in and move around with other people. Um, and I'll still keep chugging along on my channel. I think um, I like the idea that I can be kind of like a thorn in the side of most karate dojos to be a reminder to people to be like, maybe we should be a little more active in how we train and have a little more pressure in how we train. So I like being that voice online, and it's cool to see some of the videos get shared and stuff like that.
yeah, yeah, excellent. Well, keep doing what you're doing. Hopefully, I'll see you in April. Just a spoiler trailer. I'll be in Texas, most likely around the second week of April, on the weekend there. I'll be doing a workshop there in Denton, and then Mike and I are planning to meet up and train and things like that. So that'll be cool. Guys, if you haven't found out about Michael, check out his channel out. Karate Culture was the original OG channel. Lots of great cross training, solo training material there, partner drills. And Karate Breakdown has just exploded. So get on there, reach out to Mike. Mike, I think on your website you've got products, you've got merchandise. You have online instructionals too and things like that. If you can quickly talk about
Yeah,
that.
yeah, I have like a membership site. I think it's like $5 a month or something, and I take all the katas and I break them down into applications. So right now it has all the pinans, it has all the nahachis, it has kusanku, goshiho. I'm going through all my curriculum, and then each of those have like 5 to 10 different applications for that. So it's more like a supplement to what you already do, supplement to your dojo. So if you're going through a kata, you go online, go to there, and there's like a discussion forum there with people, with members. I got t-shirts and stuff like that. So yeah, that's karateBreakdown.com.
Yep. I'll put all the links to in the description. So guys, thank you so much. Mike,
Yeah, thank
thank you
you.
so
Thanks for
much.
having me. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, man.
Yeah, we'll
All the
do this
best.
again one time.
Okay.
All right.
Thanks,
Peace.
guys. Okay, I'm just gonna stop recording.